Hello and welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to be working on a skinning knife that my buddy dropped off to get some work done. Let's go ahead and take a zoom in on it and I'll show you what I'm going to be doing. This is the knife my buddy made a few years ago in his backyard. You can see it's got some old wood handles on it held together with screws and nuts. What we're going to do is we're going to take a surface conditioning belt, clean up the finish on it. I've got some orange G10 that I'm going to throw on here, and then we're going to end up making a sheath for it. So we're going to go ahead and get these removed and see what all we're working with. So there's a little bit of rust and corrosion that we're going to be working with to clean off. Let's get this tossed on the surface conditioning belt and see how it turns out. So here's what we ended up with off of the surface conditioning belt. He wanted to keep all the grind marks and aesthetics as a reminder of his first knife, but we got all the rust and corrosion off of there, and then we're going to take some blackener and do a new stone wash finish on it. But right now we're going to get this thing measured out for doing the G10 handle scales. So this is a G10 I've got it just set on here because the scales are going to be inset of the actual knife. So I'm just going to do a real close scribe, flip it over, and we'll get them cut out. Okay, so you can see that the G10 is rough shaped. I'm going to go ahead and get some holes drilled so we can start refining that shape of the handle. Okay, so I went ahead and got the holes drilled out for the handles. You can see here they're done up and everything's rough to shape. I like to use these little aluminum barrels and screws to hold the scales on the knives that I make. One thing I do have to do is I have to do a counter bore so that the heads of the screws sink down into the G10. So I will show you that on camera. So this counter bore has a pilot in there. It's a 1/4 inch that fits the hole that's been drilled in the G10. It gets locked in with these set screws, and then I also have it going down a set depth. It'll go down about halfway into the material. That way the hardware can be set into the handles once they're done being ground out. So now you can see it's got the counter bores all set up on there, and that hardware will set in there just perfect. So I have the hardware set in. You can see there it is below the surface. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this back on the grinder. We're going to get all of this very much rough to shape so that I can take the handles off and make them a little bit smaller so they're fitting inset. I just don't want to disturb the finish that he had put on it a few years ago. That's about as close as I want to get it while it's still on here so I don't disturb anything that he's already done to it. So I'm going to pull these off. I'll scribe on the insides so that I have a nice mark to go on the inside of, so that these set just below the top and bottom of the profile. Okay, you can see we've got a nice little offset from the spine all the way around. The hardware is inset. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and shape these. I'm going to get a nice bevel all the way around it, and then I'm going to do a random rock pattern for a little bit more grip when you're holding this thing. So here's where we're currently at. Hardware is inset. The scales are inset along the spine, and we've got a nice rock texture for a nice grip when using the knife. Next, I'm going to use my blackening solution, get this a nice patina on there and throw it in the tumbler. And then we'll get these all cleaned up, sanded, and brightened up so they look nice and shiny on here. But that's all I have time for today. I've got to get ready for work. So we'll be back tomorrow with hopefully the conclusion of finishing this up, and then we'll do the sheath. Welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to be working on getting the stonewash finish done on my buddy's Skinner. I'm just going to take some blackening solution and put it on there and let it sit for a little bit, and then we're going to throw it in the tumbler and see how it turns out. This is my setup that I use for blackening my knives. Currently I'm using Jack's iron, steel, and nickel blackener to do that. You get the knife cleaned off really well with acetone, so it gives the blackener a really nice adhesion and a better opportunity for a good finish. So you see here there was still some dirt and oil left over from there. I'm just going to wipe it down one more time, and then we'll get going on how quick that blackening solution works. It doesn't take much either, and I usually just recycle what I don't use, just put it back in the bottle. Alright, one of the best ways I found to do this is just take like a regular paintbrush and dip it in there, and then you just brush it on, and you can see how quickly that starts to work. So here's what it looks like after the blackening solution has worked its magic. We're going to go ahead and get it tossed in the tumbler for a few minutes and get that stonewash finish on it. The tumbler that I use is just an old treadmill that I hacked up the frame on and threw a controller on. I use different sizes of PVC tube with some tumbling media in it that I got from Harbor Freight. Works out really well to get that stonewash finish. So go ahead and throw that knife in there, throw the lid on it, and we'll see it in a few minutes. While that's tumbling, we'll go ahead and get the handles oiled up. I like to use boiled linseed oil. It gives the handles a really nice pop when everything's done. So you can see how that looks compared to oiled versus non-oiled. So here is what the Skinner looks like after stonewash. All the big splotches from the blackening solution got cleaned up with the stonewash and the tumbler. So we'll go ahead and get the scales put on and see how it looks. Alright, there it is, all done up. The only thing I have left to do is sharpen it and make a sheath for it. If you'd like to see a more in-depth video of how I'd make my sheaths, I will make another video. Go ahead and leave that in the comments. I will link another video that I've done in the past where I've shown kind of an overview of how I make my sheaths, but I will do an in-depth video if you guys want to see that. Thank you for watching, and subscribe, like, do all the things, share, so that I can continue to make content for you guys. Thank you. Have a good day.